All right, so I can't see any of you, but welcome to Intro to LDraw. What is LDraw and how you can use it to do cool Lego things on your computer. So who am I? Or actually, what are we going to talk about first? What LDraw is, how you make models using LDraw on your computer, the limitations of our system, and now that you know how to use LDraw, or now that you know how to install it on your computer, how to use it to make cool things on your computer. And then if you so choose, once you got started on your LDraw journey, the larger Lego community or LDraw community. So who am I? Well, this is me at BrickCon 2018 with my son. I never really had a dark ages, so I've always been involved with Lego in some form. I got started with LDraw in 2000, and I've been the LDraw.org website administrator. I took over from Tim Courtney, for those people who know who Tim Courtney is. I took over for him in 2004. So I've been doing this for a long time. All right, so why do we want to do Lego on our computer? The physical bricks are cool enough as it is. Well, if you make a MOC and you want to deconstruct it to make another MOC using the pieces that MOC made, you might want to document how you built that, so you can make the custom designs and create instructions for that. There's a whole cottage industry now around generating instructions and sharing them on sites like Rebrickable and other places, buildinginstructions.com and some other stuff. You can also use it to make computer generated artwork. I've seen some pretty amazing renders. And the best part, virtual bricks are free. You're only limited by the size of your hard drive, where if you make a model that's as big as your hard drive, it's probably bigger than your house in real life. And they come in any color, even colors that Lego has never produced them in. So you can make models that are literally impossible to make in real life. All right, so what is LDraw? What do we as the LDraw website, what are we offering? Well, it's kind of an ecosystem. It's all founded on the LDraw file format, a file format created by a man named James Jessamine, an Australian who unfortunately passed away at a very young age. We're carrying on his legacy by continuing to develop the LDraw format and distribute the library that describes LDraw pieces. So it's a standard. What we do is we define the standard language and we distribute the library. Currently, I just checked this morning, there's about 14,000 Lego parts in the library right now, with another 4,000 or so in our part authoring queue waiting to be approved to be added to the library. So it is completely open source. You can see everything on our website. Nothing is proprietary. We don't, the license is permissive. So we only ask that you give LDraw credit if you make something with LDraw. That's really the only restriction. We are the oldest and most mature of the Lego CAD systems. So there are a couple others out there, MechaBrick being the most notable. Studio uses LDraw as its back end. So all the pieces in Studio use the LDraw library. All of our software that other people create using LDraw, we link to at LDraw.org. So what do? Like I said, we define the description language, we do the parts library, and other people use the parts library and the description language to write editors and viewers and converters and renders and other tools that involve LDraw. So it's text-based. If you were to open up an LDraw file in your favorite text editor, this is what you would see on the left-hand side, just a bunch of numbers and lines. What that means to the average user is kind of irrelevant. Basically, this describes how the part is arranged in 3D space, and it involves math. And if you're not a math head, then you don't really need to know it. So just like anything else on your computer, everything is defined in triangles, and in our case, squares as well, or quads, I should say. We like to keep the format as a text-based thing because it's easier to read. It's not a binary thing that you have to import into a specialized program in order to edit. I have known people who have authored stuff completely in Notepad, which is insane, but it happens. As the bullet in the bottom says, we believe that our system is strong because of its simplicity and its straightforward nature. And the fact that everything that defines how we describe Lego bricks on the computer is freely available on our website for anyone to review and look at. So just a little example of our hierarchy, right? Every brick has a stud, so we have a file that defines a stud. In that file, in the file that defines a 2x4 brick, we reference 8 studs. And then if you have 3 bricks, you just reference the 2x4 brick 3 times in the parent model, right? So you don't even need to know what goes into making a 2x4 brick. That's already done for you. And then even baser, right? Every stud has a disk, so we've defined a disk. All right, so LDraw interests you. How do you get started? Well, it's easy. Go to LDraw.org, click on the gigantic Getting Started button, and choose your OS. I haven't updated the Mac stuff yet, but the Linux and Windows instructions are fairly straightforward and easy to use. I just recently learned that one of our longtime Lego editors is now Mac compatible, so we need to update our LeoCAD. Yeah. All right, and speaking of choosing an editor, the two that we recommend are LDCAD for Windows and Linux, or LeoCAD for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. Note, BrickLink Studio is available for all 3, question mark? Yes, all 3. However, it is not fully compatible with LDraw. So it uses LDraw as a backend, but there are some quirks. What those quirks are complicated to explain, so I'll just leave it at quirks. So the top one, this is LDCAD, and the bottom picture is LeoCAD. And so I loaded the same model this morning. It loaded up fine on both, so I was relieved. As you can see, aside from interface differences, it's basically the same kind of thing. It looks to me like LeoCAD is a little bit more studio-like, but having not really used it much, I couldn't really say. All right, so you've downloaded the LDraw package, you've installed it on your computer, and you're lost. What do you do now? Well, we have forums for those people who like forums. If you ask your question, there's a number, probably 10 or 11 longtime users that will try to help you out. Often the actual author of the program you're trying to use is part of the forums and will help you out. So as you can see, we've been around for a while, so our forums are quite extensive. If you search, you might actually find the answer you're looking for. That has already been answered. But if your search foo isn't very good, ask anyway. We're fairly welcoming to new people. Even if we've answered a question 9 million times, we'll answer it 9,000,001 times. We don't really care. I would rather you enjoy your use of the program or of the system than lambast you for asking a question that is asked way too much. Additionally, there's a group on Facebook, LDraw users. We have a Twitter account. There's an Instagram account, and I think that's it. We haven't gotten really branched out in anything more than that. So if you have a question, ask there. We'll probably redirect you to the forums, but you may get some assistance. Okay, so you've decided to document your mock, and you have a piece that you've used that's not in the library. Right, this happens a lot. The more crazy, organically smooth shaped it is, the less likely it is to be in the library, because describing those pieces in computer code is difficult. However, that doesn't stop you from going over to the forums and asking. A number of methods have opened up to us to get some of those pieces into LDraw quickly. It may not make it into the official library, but you can download unofficial parts that are good enough for you to use in your models. A recent example is BrickNerd ran a contest using the dice from like Dots or something like that, and it wasn't in LDraw, and we couldn't find it anywhere described. And I just asked on the forums, hey, can somebody do a quick mock-up of this? And probably within a couple hours, it was on our tracker. Just something good enough to use. It may be on the tracker for a couple of years while we refine it to our standards to include in the official library, but if it's good enough to use for your model, that's fine. So like I said, if you go to the parts tracker, it's one of the links in the menu bar. Look there. If it's not there, request it. You never know what you'll get. I request stuff all the time, and I actually author parts. So limitations of the technology. What can it do? Well, we don't officially define part snapping or part connections. Now, LDCAD does part snapping, and so does Studio. They have their own methods of doing that. It's their system. We haven't adopted anything officially. So there may be editors that allow part snapping. We haven't formally defined anything. Most editors won't do collision detection. I know Studio will tell you if two parts are colliding together, but it'll let you do that. And sometimes that's a good thing. So, plastic parts are flexible, virtual parts are not. So you may have a piece that intersects on the computer that doesn't necessarily intersect in real life, but it doesn't really matter because you can't really see that overlap except if you zoom in super high. So it does allow you to place the parts even though on the computer they collide and in real life they don't. All right, so now you have your model built in LDraw, and what do you do with it now? Well, you can do a number of things. You can make building instructions. The two major programs are LPub 3D and Studio. Studio, I would say, is good for beginners. And then if you want to do something a little bit more advanced in the layouts, then you can graduate on the LPub 3D. Both of those programs are mostly in active development. Studio more than LPub 3D, but both of them will get you what you want. So LPub, created by Kevin Clegg. He was actually writing a book about mindstorms and was surprised that there was no easy way to make instructions, so he wrote a program to do it. Kevin Clegg kind of retired from the hobby a little bit, and another person took up the torch and created LPub 3D, which is a much more fully featured editor that you can move icons around on and edit your model and whatnot. And then Studio, fully featured LDraw based model editor. So it uses the LDraw library as its backend. Is not fully LDraw compatible, but it's close. There are some parts that we use that won't import well into Studio, mostly using pattern parts. If you make a model that contains all the parts within it, it doesn't load correctly into Studio. That's kind of an edge case for advanced users. But I would say for 75% of users out there, Studio is great. And it uses LDraw as its backend. So it can make building instructions. It's fairly rudimentary. I hear it's getting a little bit better. I don't know. I haven't really used it much, honestly. But the main draw is you can make these great renderings very quickly. A rendering like this on my computer 5 or 6 years ago would have probably took an hour or two. Now I did this in like 8 minutes on my computer a couple years ago. So it's great for beginners to get started, and then if you want more, you can move on to advanced editor, and if it's good for you, stick with it, right? I'm not picky about what program people use. So speaking of renderings that took a really long time, I did this one probably 15 years ago, and it took all day on my computer. So Studio, like I said, is the easiest and best way to do a high quality render. Most of our programs will output to Pavre, which is an open source ray tracer. Pavre, modern hardware has made Pavre super fast as well. I rendered something on Pavre and it only took me about 5 minutes, which is about the same amount of time the Studio did, and it looked great. So computing power has increased astronomically along with the efficiency of the Pavre program. And LDCAD and LDView will both output to OBJ format, so you can bring it into more high-powered 3D renderers, animators, and whatnot. The author of LDCAD is actually working on doing a native Blender export into the native Blender file format. So you just go straight. You can just go straight in. That's kind of on the horizon, but it's his desire to get to do that. So a little art show that I haven't taken out of the slide. Most of these were all done in Pavre, probably 10 years or more ago. But this kind of highlights what you can do in terms of rendering your model. Here's something a little bit more artistic that you wouldn't really be able to do in real life. Or this Battle of Isenguard, which is pretty cool. All right. So you like LDraw, you want to help out. I don't know why this thing keeps reappearing on the screen. What can you do? Well, if you're good with code, you can write an LDraw compatible software. You never know what we never know what the future holds for that. So if you write something that's really cool, maybe everyone will start using that. You can write tutorials and articles for us. We're kind of at a dearth of those. I'd like to start up some sort of YouTube channel about getting started with LDraw, but real life gets in the way every time I sit down to plan it out. We really, if you can figure out how to do things in 3D, authoring parts for the library, no one is ever going to complain to you about doing that. We always need more authors to author more parts of the library. 14,000 sounds like a lot. I think back a couple, 5 or 6 years ago, I estimated how many actual bricks there are, and it's probably 5 times that. So, especially when you include patterns with the minifig torsos and all of those, like we're well behind the power curve. If you're good at website design, I am not a website designer, but I have designed the website. If you think you have a better way of doing things that will help people navigate the site better, I am always open to suggestions. And in fact, I completely revamped the site last year based on some suggestions that I got online. And then I seem to be the only one that does presentations like this, mostly because I'm the only active LDraw administrator that lives in the US. But if you want to give a presentation, no need to ask permission, just do it. Right? If you go to more than just BrickCon, I used to go to a lot of conventions. I don't anymore. I pretty much only go to BrickCon and maybe Bricks Cascade. So if you want to give a presentation, just give one, please. The more people who know about this, the better. And thus ends the slideshow portion of the presentation, and I'll open the floor to questions. Nothing? All right. Yes. Nope. I would say there's LDraw, and I would say the only other widely used format would be MechaBrick. MechaBrick does their own thing. They can import LDraw into their system, and that's the only one I really know about. There was a gentleman a while back that had his own Lego library. He hasn't really updated it in a really long time, so I wouldn't even really consider that an issue. Yeah, LDD is also out there, but again, Lego has retired LDD, so I wouldn't necessarily consider that a competing format. Sure. Okay, so we do have a web-based, there is a web-based LDraw viewer. It doesn't edit at the moment. You can actually, it'll actually auto make building instructions. It's what I used for the render on the website. Or for 3D rendering stuff, it's WebGL based. I would say an XML standard is great, but I think the LDraw file format on its own is probably fine as long as you can get a machine to read it. Yes.
Are there tools that will let you convert between Lego Digital Designer and LDraw, or are they in separate realms?
Okay, so the question was, can we convert between LDD and LDraw? And the answer is yes. There is a gentleman that distributes an XML file that translates between the two. And again, since Lego retired what they call LDD Fan, because they still use what they call LDD Pro internally. I'm not sure if we're updating that much anymore.
But if we have old LDD files, is the question.
Yeah, so LDD should be able to export into LDraw file to an LDraw format. Yeah. All right. Anything else? Okay. Thank you for attending.